Hello, everyone. Welcome to UnPontificated. And today we're going to talk about interprovincial trade in Canada. This has become a hot topic.
And today, the premiers and the prime minister held another virtual meeting to come up with strategies, including how to rapidly improve trading relationships between the provinces.
Well, let's get to it, because ever since Trump's tariff threats, there has been a growing push for making it a bit easier for us as Canadians to actually buy goods and services from each other. Now, Transport and Internal Trade Minister Anita Anand yesterday said that bringing down trade barriers between provinces could actually happen within the next 30 days.
This conversation is well overdue. I think there are some trade barriers that certainly could be undone and that are unnecessary. For example, you hear a lot from truckers, right? Truckers who go from province to province across Canada have to be inspected in every province, right? I mean, if a guy's going from Ontario to BC, he's getting inspected in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta before he gets into BC. And there's all sorts of things that he has to adhere to because of the different, depending on what he's he's carrying as well, you know. So it doesn't make any sense if we can streamline inspections across the country. Once it's been inspected in Ontario, it's been inspected in Saskatchewan or Manitoba, and Saskatchewan should acknowledge that, and so should Alberta. And then so should BC. There's no need for 4 inspections as you travel across the country. As well as when I moved personally from Ontario to Nova Scotia on my own license, my license in Ontario should work just fine. Well, it's not a really good example because it actually does work, except I just had to re-register in Nova Scotia under my own license. But some licenses don't work, and people have to re-license themselves going from province to province. And so that becomes a barrier. If you got your license in one province, you can't work in another province automatically. But I could, so my example is not going to be a good one. All right. Anyway, what are these trade barriers? What are trade barriers? What they are and why they exist and how to cut them. So this fellow, Dylan Robertson, wrote this article just recently. And I thought it was worth a read. Excuse me. So let's read it together. All right, we'll start here. So let's read this together. The Trump administration's on-off and off-again threat to impose damaging tariffs has boosted an old idea for driving economic growth in Canada, eliminating provincial trade barriers. The Trump administration's on-again, off-again threat to impose damaging tariffs has boosted an old idea for driving economic growth in Canada, eliminating interprovincial trade barriers. There are millions of different ways in which rules and regulations and standards and so on affect decisions that add up to a lot at the end of the day, said this University of Calgary economics professor, Trevor Tome, or Tomby. I'm going to say Tome. What's a trade barrier? Tome said that this term applies mostly to regulatory burdens that frustrate efforts to buy, sell, or otherwise do business across provincial lines. They generally don't involve quotas or tariffs. So, yeah, I think that's a very good explanation. The way he says it frustrates efforts to buy, sell, or do business. There's no need for that in a country. It should just be thought of as differences in the rules and regulations and standards and so on that exist from one province to the next. Navigating those different rules adds costs and therefore detracts from internal trade. Yeah, if you're going to have something add a cost to your goods and your cost of doing business, then you might as well just stay in your province and not transport it to another province, so it's just going to add to your costs. And this just hampers internal trade. What are they? The health and safety rules that vary by jurisdiction can throw up barriers to provincial trade. They include provincial regulations that require a commercial vehicle to get a second inspection after crossing the border between British Columbia and Alberta. Yeah. So, see, again, no need for that. No need. They can also include federal regulations, such as those that require federal inspections of agricultural products when they cross a provincial border, even if the product was inspected provincially when it was produced. Now, that one should just be scrapped right now. Provincial inspections are very good. They're quite rigid. There's no need for the federal government to include its own inspection after the provincial government has done it. Like, seriously? That's just bureaucracy run amok. Provincial regulations that categorize products for tax purposes. So regulations that determine which ingredients a beverage must contain to be sold as vodka, for example. Also make it harder to sell products across provincial borders. My goodness. But Tom said the modest level of alcohol trade across provincial barriers relates less to regulations and more to the fact that most provincial governments purchase their own supplies for provincial liquor agencies. Experts have been lamenting the low level of interprovincial trade in Canada for decades. Tom pointed out that the problem was flagged in the 1940 report, the Royal Commission on Dominion Provincial Relations. So I've not read that report. Maybe I'll read it and see exactly what it says. But the point is, it was flagged in the 1940s. What year is this? 2025? So 85 years ago? And we still haven't moved? Oh my goodness. So why do these barriers exist? Tom said they are largely a product of political inertia. I think a lack of inertia. These are nefarious motives on the part of provincial governments. They're just naturally, when you set your rules, you arrive at potentially slightly different rules. He said that provinces have many priorities to focus on, such as schools and hospitals, and harmonizing regulations with their neighbors is really difficult. Well, is it? Why don't you get some guys, get the Minister of Internal Trade, create a Ministry of Internal Trade. I know I'm speaking, I hate bloating the government, but this one's a big one. We're now under a threat of tariffs from Trump. And I think I saw somewhere that internal trade would boost Canada's GDP by $2 billion. I think I saw $2 billion. Was it 20 billion? I don't know. There was a 2 in there. I'll look it up and I'll show it somewhere else in this video. But we're in the billions of dollars internal trade. So I'm saying let's create between the provinces, if there isn't already. I know there's a federal Minister of Internal Trade. I think that's Anand, and she's going to be retiring anyway. But provincially, I don't know if there is one, but if each government has one. But if they do, get those people in a room, right? Go line by line of things that they can agree on. And this guy's rule for vodka says it has to have this amount of whatever, potatoes. And this guy says this amount. Let's harmonize that together and say, okay, this is now vodka. All right, this is simple. It's people like to complicate things. Stop it. In a report, Tom co-wrote for the Macdonald-Laurier Institute of 2022, he estimated that eliminating provincial barriers could boost Canada's GDP between 4.4 and 7.9% over the long term. Oh, here it is, 200 billion. I think I said 2, and then I said, oh, well, maybe 20. It's 200. At the time this was published, Tom's paper estimated that opening up the interprovincial trade could increase the size of the national economy by 200 billion. What? He said that increase in value would reach about 245 billion today, meaning thousands of dollars per person. What? Help me. understand why this is not being done. I think this constitutes an emergency. Okay, bring it back here. I think this constitutes an emergency. I think, in an emergency, the federal government was allowed to do certain things, include stripping us of our rights, our freedom of movement. Well, let's make this an emergency so that the federal government can go in and tell the provinces, hey, remove these barriers, get a nod with the internal trade guys in a room, and let's get this done. Let's just get this done. Like, I know this Liberal government, their days are numbered, and but still, they're still our government, and they can still do this within 30 days. They still do this, get the process going. There's going to be March 9th. I think it's March 9th. It's going to be a new Liberal leader. That new Liberal leader will be our Prime Minister until we have an election, hopefully in our May or June. And then, but the process can proceed. Let's just get her done. Can we get it done? All right. So what has Trudeau's government done to fix this? Ottawa brought provinces together to sign the Canadian Free Trade Agreement in 2017, which has led to some provincial and federal rules being softened or repealed to make them more uniform. Some economists have criticized the government for retaining hundreds of exceptions to rules meant to ensure barrier-free trade. Despite some partial efforts to reduce barriers in the past, provinces have been reluctant to pursue further measures. Scotiabank economist Jean-François Poirot wrote in a March 22 analysis. Tome said the 2017 Pact is really meaningful in that it created an institutional process for provinces to identify irritants and harmonize regulations. The process itself is slow. Okay, so I give Trudeau some credit there. In 2017, there was the process was started. I don't know that I personally have noticed anything, but I just go to the store and buy stuff. I don't know. Stuff right now is just expensive. And I don't know how much of an effect it has happened, given that in the 9-10 years of the Trudeau government, GDP is like the worst in the G7. GDP per capita is atrocious. So I don't know what they did, but it doesn't seem to have made much of an impact. Certainly, I don't think we've had a $200 billion growth in our economy, in our national economy. So whatever they did, I'm glad the process has been started. So there's a template. There's a template for getting it done. Let's continue that, and let's just borderless. Let's go. All right. So we added that Ottawa has limited control on how provinces regulate within their jurisdiction. The federal government has convened meetings and has launched surveys and databases meant to identify barriers and ways they can be. Ottawa has also published a building code that provinces can choose to adopt to harmonize the construction sector. The federal government also standardized electronic hours tracking for commercial drivers and consolidated 14 food safety regulations into a single set of rules. Very good. Thumbs up to there. Very good. So what would the Conservatives do? Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has said he'd prioritize tackling a patchwork of trucking regulations, arguing it should be the easiest way to get more Canadian goods moving across provincial borders. He also said he would remit tax value to provinces, that scrap regulations preventing interprovincial trade, and use the added federal tax collected from the resulting increase in commerce. That idea stems from the Scotiabank's 2022 analysis, which argued that such a move would generate $15 billion in federal revenues. Seems like a no-brainer to me. Poilievre also said he would standardize certifications for medical personnel, though past governments that have attempted to do so face pushback from regulators and unions. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Bureaucrats like to bureaucrat, right? You start harmonizing things, and then the body in Alberta might not be as, might get not circumvented, but may not become as important, because now you've got the body in Ontario, because now you've got a harmonized body. So why do you need all these bodies, right? You don't need all these bodies, and then you might start losing some bodies because you've got one body that's harmonizing everything. So maybe instead of having these bodies in all 10 provinces and territories, you can have maybe a Western body, a central body, an Eastern body, and a territorial body. So 13 bodies now becomes 4 because you don't need these others. So they're all, just want to preserve and protect their jobs. They're not thinking of the country, they're just thinking of their jobs. They face pushback. Can we have a Donald Trump type leader? I don't care what you think, this is what we're doing for the country. Take a hike. Donald Trump is a lot of things, but one thing he isn't is scared. Scared of you, scared of this body, scared of that person. That's what we need. Someone who's not subjected to the lobby of this and the lobby of that. Just get her done. All right, we're up. Tom says scrapping barriers would boost productivity and unlock economic growth. But even swift action would take years to deliver real gains. There's no avoiding a recession if indeed the US follows through with permanent 25% tariffs on Canada, he said. But over time, we could potentially more than compensate. But over time, we could potentially more than compensate. I like what this Tom guy is saying. I think we should just get it done. What we really need to do now that we know that we've got Trump in power. He's only got 4 years, so you can do a number of things. You could say, okay, hold off the 4 years. He's only got 4 years of this guy. After he's done, we'll get someone else in there who would be more reasonable. Maybe. Hey. But if it's going to be J.D. Vance is a Trump acolyte. He likes Trump, and he's about as brash as Trump. He not be as what's the word? Not psychopath, but sociopath. Anyway, it may not be exactly like Trump. It may be a little bit more reasonable, but who knows? You may get someone worse than Trump. So you can't wait. And what we've got to do now is act like you're going to get a Trump person all the time. Can we act like that? In other words, let's be our own sovereign nation. Let's diversify our exports. Let's improve internal trade within the country. That's going to boost our national economy by $200 billion. And so that's it. Internal trade, diversification of exports, and part of internal trade should include building pipelines. There's no reason that the oil from Alberta gets to the east through the states. Makes no sense. Can you just get it from Alberta to the east directly, staying in Canada? Can we do that? Can we do that, please? Help me out. Can someone help me out? Anyway, guys, that's what I got. This, I'd like to see the trade barriers come down internally in this wonderful nation. We can do so much better. We can be such a stronger nation than we are. I'm glad to see the pride in our country is going, the patriotism, the love for Canada. People are buying Canadian when you walk into stores, and people are standing up and uniting together. Did you guys see that? What happened towards the U.S. national anthem at the Raptors game a few days ago? I tell you, maybe Canadians are getting some cojones. surprised that people didn't just sit down or take a knee. Anyway, clearly Canadians are very, very perturbed, upset, angry at what Trump is doing. This friendship between two countries it's actually come, I think, as a shock to many Canadians, that this kind of friendship almost feels like a betrayal between two partners. Anyway, guys, so yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments. I would really appreciate it. I would appreciate a thumbs up, a like, and I'd also appreciate a subscription. If I subscribe. You subscribe to the channel, that would be outstanding as well. Hoping to get to 100 subscriptions by the end of February. I really appreciate it. All right, thank you very much, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye-bye.